Our next finalist is Batool Al-Subeiti, who's come from Northwest London and is currently studying chemical engineering in Birmingham. Everybody please welcome Batool.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all. My topic will be about the sexualization of females in society. The right and status of women is an issue that has always been debated at great length throughout the discourse of history. There is no denying that recently, great advancements have been made regarding the legal rights of women, such as their right to work, to pursue an education, to vote, etc. However, it seems to me that the treatment of females in today's ever-growing, hyper-sexualized world, from a moral perspective, is not only demeaning and stripping away from the human dignity, but it is also affecting and demoralizing those who believe in core principles and values, such as modesty and chastity, to be in fact the solution to that hypersexualization that is so prevalent in the world today. I will begin with an anecdote from my mother's early youthful period, where she grew up in Lebanon. The society during the 1970s in Lebanon was similar to that of England today, in the sense that it was accepting of widespread sexual freedom. Despite my mother's young age, her innate instinct drew her to modesty, as she felt uncomfortable promoting a sexual appeal in public through the way she dressed and acted. And that was the norm at the time, by the way. She looked up to sacred individuals such as Lady Mary and would take her as a role model. Now, during the Civil War at the time, she became the victim of a fatal injury in her head, where she almost lost her life. It was during this crucial period where she saw death in front of her very own eyes that reality truly hit her. She had a purpose in life and cannot go on living the way society dictates it to be. It was then that she made a promise with God. She promised that if he was to extend her life, she would search for what it is he expects from her and will follow it. Now, an outcome of the searching led her ultimately to dressing more modestly. Something within her nature just knew at that tender age of 14 that dressing provocatively in public was morally wrong, and that getting closer to God requires one to observe that modesty and chastity. And that was when, by the grace of God, she received the necessary operations and she survived. However, of course, by choosing to wear the head covering and to adopt that modest demeanor, she received the negative end of the stick, where she was labeled as backwards and not adhering to the modern rules of society. When we think about it today, it is unfortunate that such views still exist, where in fact the degradation of women has become so widespread in media culture, and the modest demeanor is something that is so frowned upon that it's reached the point where it's unusual to find a TV advert or a billboard without there being some sort of sexual appeal promoted through a female. Furthermore, as a youth growing up within this generation, I have witnessed the effects that celebrities and the entertainment industry has had on me, myself, as well as my fellow friends and classmates, where such individuals are given so much unnecessary reverence and attention for petty reasons such as the way they look. Until only recently was I personally able to detach myself from this whole selfie obsession and culture. Only until recently was I able to fully wipe off any form of cosmetics from my face. Funnily enough, in that period of time when I used to apply makeup, the more I would apply, the less prettier I felt. And naturally, I became more obsessed and consumed with public opinion. Why? Because not receiving a compliment or a look from somebody when you had put in that effort and you had made your effort to look good made me feel quite low, because I felt like I wasn't getting what I was expecting from everyone. that had kept me immersed in the trivial and petty materialistic affairs that are being promoted by the media culture, rather than having me as a youth focus on the really important and productive aspects that should be concerning me, such as my physical, spiritual, psychological, educational, and mental health. I find it very unfortunate that as women, we are increasingly being convinced that in order to develop a personality and have some self-worth, that we need to look physically attractive and appealing to men. For the greatness of women does not depend on their ability to attract the attention of immoral men. This will not bring about dignity and respect for them. The greatness of women depends on their ability to focus on their purpose in existence, and that is to acquire knowledge and contribute towards the betterment of human society. The woman is sacred, with the responsibility of rearing children and instilling core values within them. It is through women that the future of our society is determined. This is not something to be taken lightly. We should be treated with respect, but of course we should first and foremost treat ourselves with respect in order to receive that as well. Moreover, it is important now that we at least try to identify and tackle the root cause of the sexualization that's so prevalent. And I would argue that it mainly stems from the unlimited sexual freedom that is so prevalent. And if you think about it, without there being limits established for the relations between men and women, sexual excitement and stimulation increase, and when they increase, they become unquenchable. This is because by its very nature, the sexual instinct is a very powerful and deep-rooted one. Although one thinks that by giving into it and obeying it, one has control over it, they're wrong, because its rebellious nature continues to show forth, and it's one of those desires that you can never get enough of. So it's exactly for this reason that ethical and religious principles have been established over time to regulate these unending human desires in the right direction, which if taken out of those bounds will lead to human destruction. It's shown that where sexual freedom is very prevalent, psychological illnesses such as the addiction to pornography are greater than in a society which has sexual limitations. But what exactly is meant here by sexual limitations? Celibacy? Of course not. By limitation, I mean limiting these sexual affairs to an established institution. An established institution that's very own basis lays down the foundation for commitment between the two couples. That's very important. And that is within marriage relations. Now, I've mentioned the marital environment. And in relation to this, quite interestingly, some people would ask, why is it that I'm advocating that sexual relations should only take place between a husband and a wife? Although it's true that in reality, many marriages do fail. And many unmarital relationships are indeed very successful. We need to denote that marriages do not fail due to there being an issue with the institution of marriage itself, but due to the fact that the commitment, the rights and responsibilities that were laid out by the marriage contract at the start was not fulfilled by the two couples, right? But however, in the former successful unmarital relation, the couples may have decided to commit despite there not being a contract present to sign initially. So what's important to denote here is that the foundation of marriage is a legitimate one. It's a holy one. It's an institution that's based on rights and responsibilities. Sexual relations is part of that rights, but it's not the only right. However, if we're looking at any other relationship, because that contract was not set out in the first place in a formal way, there's no accountability for the rights and responsibilities. Therefore, that foundation can more easily be broken and is not taken as seriously. I would like to conclude by saying that this is due to the fact that both genders within widespread society are indulging in this free sexual relations that we have this issue of sexualization. It is important that as individuals belonging to different communities that we unite together on the tackling of this issue and focus on the importance of raising awareness about the reality of the situation. It is such issues within society that have made me adamant to become the head of an Islamic society at the University of Birmingham in hopes to set up initiatives such as workshops to empower females on the importance of leading productive lives and to get away from this sexualization and to not feel like they have to live in the way society dictates it, the way friends dictate it, the way social media dictates it. We have to know our self-worth and lead productive lives. This is what we were created for. We've all got a purpose in existence and we need to realize it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Batool. I have a question. Listening to your speech, I found it a bit curious that men are rather absent in the sense that sexualization is also something that is perhaps perpetuated or done by men to women. In particular, because I'm reminded of feminist debates where the question is, well, how do you deal with it? Is the onus on women then again, to keep men from doing certain things and so on?
Yeah.
Then again, you find yourself in a situation where shame might be put on women. So my question is, where do you see men's role in that?
So that's a very good question. So essentially, due, unfortunately, to time constraints, I actually had a paragraph where I was going to speak about that specifically, but unfortunately, I didn't have the time, but I can elaborate on it now. So mainly what I'm trying to get at is from the females' so I spoke about the importance of the marriage institution and how anything which threatens this institution should be combated. And we should all stand in resistance against that. And one of the things which threatens that is when men seek that sexual fulfillment outside the realm of marriage. So in essence, if we want to create a healthy society where everyone's morale and spirit is healthy, then both men and women have rights and responsibilities. And the responsibility of the women, of course, in that case would be that within the so there's a time and place for everything. Within the marital environment, that's where your sexuality manifests, right? Outside the household, that should be put to a much lesser extent. And the man's responsibility, therefore, is to not seek sexual fulfillment outside of marriage. A lot of the times we see that because of the sexualization of the females, that encourages men to go outside of the marital environment. So as women, and specifically and particularly because this is a women's issue, I thought perhaps I will steer it and focus more on the women's aspect. But of course, as women, if we empower ourselves and we don't get ourselves sexualized, then we're prohibiting and inhibiting a lot of the times the men from acting on their sexual instincts. But of course, the responsibility of a man in this case, even if a woman is manifesting her sexuality or not in public, he should not seek that sexual fulfillment outside the realm of marriage. That is his responsibility. So I'll make that clear, of course. Thank you. Is that the question? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.